All right, so we're diving into this whole World Book Day thing. You're probably thinking like, okay, it's a day on the calendar. What's the big deal? Get this. There's actually like a whole charity behind it. A World Book Day charity. We'll be looking at the National Literacy Trust website for this deep dive, and we're going to go way beyond the date, March 6th.
Yeah, it's more than just a day, right?
Yeah.
World Book Day is really a year-round effort driven by this dedicated charity.
A dedicated charity, huh?
Yeah, and the National Literacy Trust, they're hugely involved.
Interesting.
And they're both, like, really big on this whole reading for pleasure
thing. Reading for pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, it's not just for kids, right? I'm assuming you like to read for pleasure.
Right, for sure.
But like, why is it so important?
Well, the National Literacy Trust, they'd say that if you enjoy reading, you're going to do it more. And the more you read, the more you just naturally learn stuff, you know? Even without realizing, it's like sneaking in those veggies, you know, in your smoothie. You don't even realize you're getting all the good stuff. They have a ton of resources on their website about cultivating this habit, too. And it's for everybody, not just for kids.
Right. Okay. I remember seeing those 1 pound World Book Day books.
Oh.
That deadline has already passed, though.
Yeah, it has.
But we're going to uncover other ways to kind of get in on the action. And if you're still confused about tokens or anything, the World Book Day people say just email them at wbd@education.co.uk or hi@worldbookday.com.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So get your questions answered. So this is interesting. The World Book Day charity had this event called the Great Big Footy and Bookie Quiz.
Yes. Football and books.
You wouldn't think like those two would go together, but they found a way.
They did. One round had kids actually matching like famous footballers with their autobiographies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it got really competitive. The quiz was aimed at 8 to 12-year-olds, which is school years 4 to 7 in England, P5 to S1 in Scotland. So pretty inclusive. And get this, they record the whole thing. It's out there. Somewhere online, you just gotta find it.
I am intrigued now. I gotta find this quiz.
So speaking of getting kids excited about reading, the National Literacy Trust has this thing called the Ultimate Character Champion Battle. Sounds like a fun way to get kids thinking critically about the books that they read.
Oh, yeah. So imagine kids in a classroom. They basically become like lawyers for their favorite book characters, debating their strengths and weaknesses and like their most exciting moments. It's all about encouraging kids to really engage with the book and, you know, develop those order-racy skills, those speaking and debating skills, which are so important. And they actually have like tailored resources for different age groups from 5 to 14 so that everyone can participate.
Wow, that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So quizzes, we got character battles. It seems like making reading fun is kind of a big theme here. It is a big thing. One thing they really push is giving students choice in what they read. Because like, if you're forced to read something, it becomes less appealing, right?
Of course.
But when you can discover and explore books that you're actually interested in, well, then the magic happens.
That's a good point, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, does that backfire at all? I mean, what if the kid just picks graphic novels all the time? Or like books that are way below their reading level?
That's where a good teacher or a librarian, you know, comes in. They can guide students towards things that are a little bit more challenging, you know, that's still within their interests.
Right, it's a balance, right?
Yeah, you need that balance. Choice and growth, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so, you know, thinking about World Book Day, it's often associated with like, you know, dressing up as your favorite character.
Oh yeah, the costumes.
But what about the people who just aren't into that?
Well, the National Literacy Trust thought of that. They actually have some alternative activities so nobody feels left out. And they're really creative, actually. Like, they've got activities for making top hats and even, wait for it, potato characters. We'll talk more about that later. But yeah, they've made sure that everyone can participate in the fun.
Potato characters, huh?
Yeah, we'll get to those.
Okay.
I'm intrigued. But, you know, this is something else that's really interesting. The National Literacy Trust, they talk a lot about early literacy development. And even if you're not a kid anymore, it's still relevant.
Even if you're not a kid anymore?
Yeah.
Okay. How so?
Well, because those early experiences that we have with books, they shape our relationship with reading for our whole lives, you know? Think back to your own childhood. Did you have a favorite book? Or like a special place where you love to read?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And those early memories, they can have a powerful impact on how we approach reading as adults. They really do.
Yeah, like for me, it was those weekly trips to the library as a kid. It was always such a big adventure.
It really is. And it's not just about nostalgia. The National Literacy Trust, they actually offer some guidance for parents and educators who are working with these little ones. And it can be helpful even for us adults just to kind of understand the process of developing that love for reading.
I see, I see. So even if we're not directly involved in teaching kids to read, understanding how those foundations are laid can help us create a more literacy-rich environment.
Exactly.
Okay. So, we talked about these premium resources the National Literacy Trust has for members. And you mentioned something about creating a whole school reading environment. What does that even look like?
Well, they've got these guides for both primary and secondary schools with practical advice on everything, from how to design inviting reading spaces to organizing author visits and even book clubs. They really go all out to make reading a core part of the school culture.
Yeah, I bet that makes a difference. But let's kind of step back a bit and think about how we as individuals can help promote reading, even if we're not teachers or parents.
Well, it starts with just simple things. Like, think about how you interact with books in your own life. Do you share book recommendations with friends? Do you talk about what you're reading? Sometimes just letting people see you enjoying a book can kind of spark their own curiosity.
That's a good point. It's like being a reading ambassador in your own world. But what about something more concrete? Are there ways to make reading more visible and accessible in our communities?
Absolutely. Have you seen those little free libraries popping up in neighborhoods?
Oh, yeah.
Those are awesome. Or maybe you could start a book swap shelf at work. It's about being creative and making books available and encouraging people to just pick them up.
Yeah, I love that. So we can all be little reading activists in our own way. But bringing it back to the National Literacy Trust for a second, we talked about their Words for Life website for families, but they also have a ton of stuff for educators too, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Their website is like a treasure trove for teachers. They have advice on everything from how to design engaging lessons to reaching those reluctant readers and even helping to choose books for all different ages and interests.
It all comes back to making reading fun and relevant, right?
Exactly. Because if kids see reading as a chore, they're never going to develop that love for it. That kind of brings us back to those alternative World Book Day activities that we talked about earlier, the ones without costumes. I really want to hear more about these top hats and potato characters.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to hear about the potato characters.
Don't worry, we haven't forgotten about those. Okay, so the top hat activity basically encourages kids to get creative with their favorite book characters. They can decorate a top hat to represent a character or even dream up a whole new character and design a hat for them. It's all about expressing their love for books in a way that's personal and fun.
That's cute. But let's be real here. Those potato characters are what I'm really curious about.
Yeah.
Are we talking about actual potatoes from the grocery store?
Yep. Might sound a little silly, but trust me, it works. It really gets their creative juices flowing. Kids use potatoes as a base for creating book characters. They can use paint, markers, googly eyes, pipe cleaners. The possibilities are endless.
Okay, I have to admit, I was a little skeptical at first, but now I'm on board with the potato characters. I mean, hey, Everyone's got access to potatoes, right?
Yeah.
But this conversation has really made me think about something. Not everyone has equal access to books or libraries or even those really supportive reading environments. What are your thoughts on that?
That's such an important point. That's one reason why organizations like the National Literacy Trust are so crucial. They're working hard to address those inequalities and ensure that every child, no matter their background, has the opportunity to become a reader.
That's really encouraging. So besides donating to organizations like that, what can individuals do to kind of help create a more equitable reading landscape?
Well, volunteering at your local library or school is a fantastic way to make a direct impact. Or even just reading to children at a shelter, or donating gently used books, to organizations that serve under-resourced communities can go a long way. And don't forget the power of advocacy. Speaking up for literacy programs and policies that support access to books, that can have a ripple effect.
Yeah. It sounds like we can all be part of the solution in some way, big or small. It's amazing what we can do just in our own little ways.
Right.
But, sometimes I wonder, does all this, does it actually work? Do things like World Book Day really make a difference?
I know, right? It's a fair question. But the cool thing is, the National Literacy Trust, they actually did some research to figure that out. They wanted to see what kind of impact World Book Day was really having.
Okay. So did they find out? Does it actually move the needle? Does it change kids' reading habits, even for just one day?
Oh, they found that it really does, and in ways you might not even expect. Like for a lot of kids, World Book Day is the first time they actually get to own a book.
Yep.
And that can be huge, especially for kids who maybe don't have many books at home. That feeling of ownership, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
suddenly it's not just something you borrow from school,
Yeah.
It's yours.
Exactly. It's something to treasure. And the research showed that World Book Day also creates all these opportunities for fun reading stuff, like the quizzes, the character battles, the creative projects we talked about, but even beyond that. It's about building a whole culture where reading is something you do.
Yeah. Like, hey, reading's not just about sitting quietly with a book. It can be social, it can be creative, it can even be a little bit crazy.
Right. And when reading is fun, well, kids are more likely to keep doing it, and that's what we want.
That is what we want, yeah. But I mean, it seems like these days there's so much like competition for kids' attention, right? Between video games and social media and everything else. It's got to be hard to like cut through all that noise.
Oh, for sure. There's a lot vying for their attention. That's why it's so important to make reading something exciting, something they'll want to do. And World Book Day does that, It creates good memories and associations with books that can stay with kids for a really long time. It goes beyond just the books themselves. It's about exploring and discovering new things.
Yeah, that sense of discovery, that's something special,
Yeah.
right? It stays with you. I still remember that feeling from when I was a kid, just getting lost in a good book. Like, it was magic.
Exactly. And that's the magic we want every kid to experience. That's what World Book Day is all about. It's not just a one-day thing. It's about planting those seeds for a lifelong love of books.
This whole deep dive has been so interesting. It's really clear that World Book Day is way more than just a date on the calendar. It's a whole movement. It's a celebration. And it reminds us that we can all do something to support reading, whether it's for ourselves or for others. But before we wrap up, I have to ask you, if you could create your own book event or campaign, what would it be?
That's a tough one. Okay, if I could go all out, I think I'd create a program where every child gets a personalized book recommendation every month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, based on their interests, their reading level, all that. Just imagine getting a book in the mail that was picked just for you.
I love that idea.
Right. It takes all the pressure off of trying to find something you'll like, and it just opens up a whole new world.
Yeah, it's like having your own personal book concierge.
Exactly. Because in the end, we want kids to see reading as an adventure, not a chore. And that's what World Book Day does so well.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into World Book Day. Hopefully everyone listening is feeling inspired to, pick up a good book and celebrate the power of reading.
It was my pleasure. And to all you listeners out there, happy reading.